sound design is absolutely essential for good transitions, and just to highlight that, let's really quickly take a look at part of that intro sequence, but without any of the sound effects. You see what I mean? It's just, like, incomplete. Like, I'm sorry to the Aidin that edited this video, but it's just worse. It's just bad. It's not good. It feels like something's missing. To ensure that you yourself don't end up in that situation, I want to show you today how to use sound design for your transitions and how to not only do that, but be creative with it and not hate it. Now, of course, the first thing you need to know is where to get the sound effects you're using. There are a lot of different sites, but what I've been using recently is a site called Epidemic Sound. It's an extensive library of online sound effects, but what's especially cool about it for us is that they've really made it with creators in mind. There's a specific creator subscription, and a lot of the things you'll find on the site are things that are going to be very fitting to use in your online content. In addition to sound effects, it's also a great site for downloading royalty-free music to use in your videos, and what I really like about it is that it allows you to download the individual tracks for the song. So if I didn't like the drums on the beat that I'm using as the background music in this video, I could just get rid of that. It's pretty nifty. Now, there are plenty of online sound effects libraries that are completely free for you to access, but there are a few different problems with them, namely that they might be limited, like the YouTube audio library, where there are very few sound effects available, or they might just be poor quality, like freesound.org. I remember a while ago looking for like a horse whinny sound effect on Freesound, and a lot of the results that came up were just people with microphones impersonating a horse sound effect. So yeah, that's definitely one of the more prominent advantages of using a paid, more curated service. There will be a link in the description to where you can learn more about Epidemic Sound or download a free trial, and while they're not sponsoring this video or paying me to say anything, I am an ambassador with Epidemic Sound, so that link is an affiliate link. So do be aware that if you sign up using that link in the description, I will acquire some currency. That being said, let's move on to talking about what sounds you should actually download and use in your project. The sound effect most commonly used for transitions is what's called a whoosh sound effect. It's very versatile for transition sound design because it can emphasize motion, which a lot of transitions are or consist of. The whoosh sound effect has a bunch of different variations, and it's something you can get quite a lot of use out of for your projects, but it is of course bad to use the same sound effect for everything. To prevent your video from becoming repetitive or boring, it's important to replace that whoosh sound effect with something else sometimes. What I like to do is replace that with a sound effect that's specific to the shot or location. So if I'm editing a scene that takes place in the forest, I might replace that whoosh sound effect with something like the sound of a branch rustling. Similarly, if I was editing a scene that takes place at the beach, I might use a wave crashing, or if I'm filming something that's urban, I could use a car passing. This technique is one that I used extensively throughout my Iceland travel video. For shots that took place on this old rusty metal plane, I replaced that whoosh sound effect with metallic sounds like scraping or creaking. And I used that same technique throughout other parts of the video, whether the setting was more urban, or next to one of Iceland's many waterfalls, or even just a more earthy, grassy environment. With this technique, the sky is pretty much the limit, so just get creative with it. Another kind of sound effect that you should be looking for is sounds that build up to a peak. So there's a gradual increase in the sound, and then there's an impact. There's a loudest point in the middle. These kinds of sounds are particularly advantageous for transitions because they mimic the way many transitions are animated. They build up gradually, and there's a climax somewhere in the middle. There's an example of this that I used in my Charleston vlog, where I have a shot of a cannon that speed ramps to another shot. The speed ramp is a perfect example of one of those transitions that gradually builds up to a climax in the middle. So what I did was I took the sound of a cannon firing. So there's that gradual buildup of the fuse getting louder and louder, and right in the middle there's that impact when the cannon fires. Not only does that sound effect emphasize the motion and impact of that transition, it also reflects the location and the specific image, and it just has more character than a regular whoosh sound effect would. Just to give you one more example of this, in last week's video I had a shot of a tractor, and there's not even really a transition, it's just a cut, but I did use the same kind of sound effect technique where I got the sound of a tractor starting. So you have that impact of the keys in the ignition, and then that impact when the engine actually starts. And just for the record, I'm not particularly knowledgeable about tractors, so I'm sorry if I annoyed any of my rural audience. Just like the rest of sound design, having good transition sound doesn't end with just having the right sound effects. So I want to show you a few ways you can modify your sounds to make them a bit more effective. The most simple way to do this is just to layer multiple sounds, and this is often something that you just have to do because you very rarely find one perfect sound effect that works for your clip. What I tend to do is combine a whoosh sound effect with other kinds of sound effects like the branch rustling or wave crashing that we talked about earlier. This way we have a bit of both and it kind of fills it out more. You can also change the speed of a sound effect to make it fit different kinds of transitions. So if we once again take that same whoosh sound effect, if we slow it down, it has a bit more weight to it. It feels like a more gradual, heavy motion. But if we speed it up, it sounds like a lot faster and lighter, kind of like just a little swipe. And finally, you can modify your sound effects by just keyframing their volume. And the reason you would most likely do this is to fade them in and out to follow your transition. While you're doing this, you can also use keyframe interpolation, which is a technique that's oftentimes used with the transitions themselves, and it allows you to make those keyframes more gradual, smooth them out, or make them more exponential. So hopefully all of these different techniques give you a pretty good starter kit to enhance your transitions using sound design. But if there's one final piece of advice I have for you with this video, it's to not turn around and use sound design for just your transitions and nothing else. Every day I see videos where there's sound design around the transitions, maybe a whoosh sound effect here and there. But aside from that, it's completely empty. It looks like an off-brand music video. So please just be aware and keep in mind that transition sound is one of many different uses for sound design. It's not just about transitions, it's also about location and atmosphere. Speaking of location and atmosphere, this is my third sound design video, and I actually made 2 more before this, talking about location sound and atmospheric sound. So if you want to learn a bit more about sound design, you can check those out by watching these videos. But I hope you enjoyed this video or learned something from it. If you did, do feel free to show your support by leaving a like on the video, sharing it with your friends, or even subscribing to my channel. I upload 2 new filmmaking tutorials every single week. But that's all for now. Keep creating, and I'll see you in the next one.